Welcome to the Second Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your recap episode for this week's Scottish Open. Joining me to break it all down, Greg DuCharme is here. What up, Gregors?
Well, what's going on, boys? There's only one thing to say this week, and it's what a week.
Wow.
Which it says on this hat here.
What a move.
Yes, which was gifted to me by Rick and Mina. It was a birthday gift. Fantastic. You can get all kinds of merch like this in the merch store. So thank you, and what a week.
Well, happy birthday. You're welcome, and what a week. Mark Immelman is here. Mark Immelman is there. Mark Immelman is coming to us from Scotland. Hello, Mark.
Hi, yeah. Pardon the Wi-Fi. It's probably a little iffy. The wallpaper above me, it is something. Yeah, in the Marine Hotel. It's a gorgeous spot. It's been a fantastic few days. To use Greg's terms, what a week. It has been incredible. And the weather we had for 4 days over here until late this afternoon when, as they call it, the har rolls in, and that's like the marine layer. It was incomprehensible. I couldn't believe how good the weather was. It was a sensational week.
It was perfect. The course was firm and fast. It was a lot of fun. We've got a winner. Might not be the one everyone was expecting, but it's the guy who very clearly played the best golf this week. And of course, I'm referring to Chris Gotterup, who got her done this week. A round of 70, 66 on the weekend. And Greg, let's start here because on Friday night, he was the overnight leader. He had to go into the final group with Rory McIlroy on Sunday. He stared down Rory, beat him by 2 shots, and beat the field by 2 shots.
This was incredible. And like we said on Friday, Rick, we're going to learn a lot about Chris Gotterup this weekend because he shot 61 on Friday and got up into the lead, had a 2-shot lead, and ends with a 2-shot victory. So really impressive. I think everything we learned about him is very good. But like Chris Gotterup hasn't contended in an event anywhere close to this stature in his career. We've known that he's extremely talented, but he's had a hard time keeping the ball on the planet, really, for the beginning of his PGA Tour career, except for one win in Myrtle Beach last season. And then all of a sudden, he starts figuring it out this year, and it starts to look a little different. He starts racking up some top 25s in a row, starts understanding where his golf ball is going to go, and all of a sudden that driver's a weapon. Well, now it's kind of like that movie, what is it, The Candidate with Will Ferrell? When Will Ferrell looks across at the podium and says, "Welcome to the show." I left out an expletive there. And that's kind of what I felt like today was on the first tee for Chris Gotterup. You got all of a sudden now, hey, things are going well. You're in the lead. And now you got to look at Rory McIlroy. And he did it.
He did. And I was a little bit worried, Mark, because he made bogey on the first hole. So you never know how that's going to go. There was a point in this round where he was put on the clock, which certainly never helps when you're trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. But he did it. And he did it in pretty, I don't want to say easy. It wasn't easy, but he made it look easy.
He's a gamer. I mean, I've known him for a while. And I just want to take a little step back to maybe set this whole thing up. Now, not to say that winning the NCAAs is a harbinger for success at the highest level on the tour, but if you look at some of the guys who won the NCAA championship, they've turned out pretty good on the PGA Tour. And I'm talking about guys like Mickelson and Tiger and people like that. So winning the National Collegiate Athletic Association National Championship is what he did. And he proved kind of who he was. And the way he went about doing that, because he's from New Jersey, played golf at Rutgers. Then in the COVID year, his extra year, he went down to Oklahoma. So he's completely moved out of his comfort zone just to kind of get more competition. And that worked out really well. So clearly there's a guy here who's up for this sort of thing. And then, of course, eventually turns professional, struggles a bit. But I know he's coached Jason Birnbaum very well. And they keep things simple. And he's a real gutsy sort of a grinder. And eventually earns a win on the PGA Tour in an opposite field event. And sort of just playing his way along there. And of late, the game's been trending. I've been listening to you guys. And today, to Greg's point, it's on. Now you got to show up. And And I'll tell you the biggest thing about him that showed up was the way he putted on these greens. Because the greens were, look, they're good. But on links golf, you're always going to get some sort of little ball that wiggles or weaves a little bit. They're never really fast. And he holed out better than anybody I had seen. In fact, today, I think he only really missed one putt of consequence coming down the final few holes. And that to me was the difference in the end. But it was a brave finish. I mean, to stand there on 18, well, 17 is not easy, but to stand on 18 and try and find that fairway with putt bunkers every side and wedge it in the middle of the green and 2-putt, I was down there for that because my group was done. I was suitably impressed by the way he put it together this week against some big-time competition.
15 for 20 in scrambling for the week. He also made a couple of very good par putts on Sunday. Greg, would we describe this as effectively wild? 22 fairways he hit this week, 42%. That's kind of the way he does it, right? Go out there, mash the thing, find it, and advance it. And when you play link style golf, just hope you don't find some of those pop bunkers that you have to play backwards out of.
Yes, which he didn't get in that kind of trouble very often this week. Rory did on a couple of occasions today. He fortunately didn't. And so, yeah, is it strategically wild? Yeah, but it also wasn't necessarily wild. I mean, he was hitting tee shots 375 yards, right? And the ball's bouncing. It's obviously how it gets that far. But all of a sudden, the ball is going to end up in the rough on occasion when you're hitting it that far. So I actually look at what Gotterup did with the driver, and I think there's a tremendous amount of control at that speed, despite what the fairways and regulation number says. So I was very impressed with that. There were a couple of wider misses, which, again, that's going to happen. But all in all, extremely impressed. And I want to go back to what Mark said, too, about these greens. Last 2 seasons, from 4 to 8 feet, these are the hardest greens on the PGA Tour to putt. And he handled that beautifully today.
I want to add to what you say about the way the course is playing too, Greg, because, with the place being so firm and fast, and look, it was like concrete in spots. I mean, I stood in the 14th tee, and it sort of sounded like this when you just bang a club on the ground. So it was really cool to see a golf course play like that. It accentuated all the slopes and stuff. But what it also does, like the last couple of years we've been here, when it's been wet, if you're off the fairway, you were punished because the fescue isn't wispy and it's the thick green lush grass underneath. And if you missed fairways, you were going to pay the penalty. Naturally, the fairways played wider because of the softer conditions. But now, because it was so dry, all that rough grass and the fescue was sort of dried out a little bit more wispy. So you could bludgeon the thing down there and sort of get lucky once or twice. You had to be very unlucky, let me put it to you this, to say you hit one offline and couldn't really advance the ball somewhere up to the green. And then on a hole like 16, for argument's sakes, I mean, I was seeing guys like yesterday, Marco Penge hit a wedge from like 220 yards. You only had to hit the thing about 160 in the air, and then it gets on a slope and runs all the way up to the par 5 green. So the firmness of the place did make it play fast, but it kind of dulled the effect of the rough a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, those wispies are they don't stand up to the club speeds when they're dry and breaking quite easily. Well, the victory goes a long way, obviously, Greg. The original victory, the first victory, was Myrtle Beach, which was an opposite field event. This is Scottish Open. We came into this week saying it's the second strongest field that the PGA Tour had this year, behind just the Players' Championship. All of the things that come along with the victory Chris Gotterup is going to receive, and he has only played in 3 major championships in his life. He played at the Country Club in Brookline, played at Valhalla, and he played at Oakmont. That's going to change. He's going to play a lot more of these moving forward.
Yes, including next week. He's heading up to Northern Ireland, and he's going to play his first ever Open Championship, which would be pretty cool. He's also going to play the next major after that, which will be the Masters. And we'll have a pretty good chance of playing the PGA Championship as well. Moves all the way up to 39th projected right now in the FedEx Cup standings. That's solidified into the playoffs. Obviously, he was going to keep his card next year regardless because of the win in Myrtle Beach. But now a FedEx Cup is very much on the line. And I keep saying this, but you get yourself inside that top 70, you have a better chance this year than you have in the last 5 years of actually winning the FedEx Cup, maybe ever. Because all you got to do is get inside the top 30 after the BMW and go win a golf tournament with 30 guys. So I'm not saying it's easy to do, but I'm saying you have a chance to do it. Before, you didn't really have a chance. So I love that aspect of it. And he's positioned now for that. He's positioned to get into the signature events for next season. This is a career-changing win without question.
Trajectory is now different for Mr. Gotterup. He'll play his first Open Championship, as Greg mentioned, next week. The main enemy, Rory McIlroy, will not be playing his first major championship next week. I think it's number 16 for him, Mark. We'll get to a lot of Rory McIlroy around Royal Portrush conversation, but let's get to Rory McIlroy around the Rennaisance Club conversation first. He birdied number 8 and then played his final 10 holes at even par with 10 pars. A lot of decent looks, a lot of opportunities, none that he was really able to take advantage of. And he's going to end up finishing 2 shots behind Chris Gotterup in a tie for second.
Yeah, and I just want to clean something up. Someone's pointed out in the chat that I misspoke on Chris winning the national championship. He was the Haskins Player of the Year in college, so he was the Player of the Year. So forgive me for that. To Rory, I will say this because, again, I was in the group in front, and I could sort of turn it around and watch a little bit. I think the putter just sort of dried up a little bit because, the way the golf course was playing, I want to say it was there to be scored on, but you had to be very precise. And when the conditions are firm, the flag is not the destination. You sort of got to hit balls into areas and then feed the ball to the hole. So you can't necessarily play offense a bunch. And I would say there were 2 major situations where he missed coming in that stretch of pars you document. First off, that whole location on 12, both Saturday and Sunday, the par 3, was devilish. Saturday was more front left. It brought in the false front. Today it was more back left. Anything left and you were cooked. So the players would play it to the right-hand side. And I had a group prior, and guys made a couple bogeys there because it was playing like one of the hardest holes in the course. And Rory Stings went in there after Gotterup hit one close. And then Rory misses from like 7-8 feet. Gotterup makes. So you got the differential there. And then he turns around, and then on the par 5, 16, doesn't really take advantage either. And then there was a missed opportunity on 14. So I think it was largely on the putter. But then, again, you sort of expect that stuff around venues like this. I think if you look at things from the grander point of view, though, given where he was, we can say, yeah, okay, well, you finished with 10 pars or whatever it was. But the Rory that we saw at the US Open, this guy's worlds removed from that. And if we're projecting and prognosticating, I think things are certainly trending in the right direction. So he'll be a little miff, I'm sure. But, going back to Portrush with a little momentum under the belt, I think is a good thing.
I'm happy to report that Mark's eye test and the numbers align on this one, Greg, because Rory McIlroy, when he made that birdie putt on number 8, he was trending towards one of the best putting weeks we have ever seen from Rory McIlroy. And over the last 10 holes, he lost about 1.7 strokes putting. He made nothing coming in. I'm sure he will rue that. And I'm sure he will also rue the fact that he played the par 5s at 1 over today.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And I love the way Mark breaks it down in kind of there's 2 perspectives to look at this. So we start with just this tournament. What held Rory back from winning? Playing the par 5s 1 over is inexcusable for Rory McIlroy on a Sunday. They were the 14th, 16th, 17th most difficult holes on the golf course. So some of the easiest holes on the golf course is what I'm really saying. And he didn't get any of them. That's disappointing. You have a miss from 4 feet at number 12 when Gotterup's in there tight as well. You have to have that one. those are the kind of disappointing moments. One par 5 in particular as well, number 16, he's got wedge in and walks away with 5. And he hit pitching wedge in for his second shot. Makes 5. It's just brutal. Missed all 3 fairways on the par 5s. That's also extremely disappointing. So that is why he didn't win this tournament. But as Mark was also saying, heading into the Open Championship next week, it's not necessarily a bad thing. This is you got a taste of it. He's in the final group. He's in contention. He looked focused. The putter was phenomenal all week. I mean, one thing that I really look at with Rory is how does he putt from close range? And he was second in the field this week inside of 10 feet. You know, he was 61 of 65 for the week inside of 10 feet. That's pretty good. And it's a really good sign when that's Rory McIlroy.
I want to say this quickly, Rick, and this is maybe by the by, but it's a couple extra points and something to look for, you know, how the whole thing pans out for next week. Because this week he'd been playing with a 5-wood in the bag for the longest time, took that out and had a 2-iron back in there and was hitting this thing beautifully. So it was like a beautiful fairway finder, sort of a club. I'm keen to see now with conditions forecast for next week if that stays in there. And then speaking of like random clubs, early in the week, I'm sure you saw on social media, a guy made this persimmon driver for him that documented the Grand Slam with the sole plate. So I asked him, I'm like, so what did it feel like? And he goes, man, it was awesome. And he goes, but I had to feel like in transition, I had to wait for the club a bit more because the shaft was different. You know, the head is sweet spot so small. So I'm like, so how far did you hit it? And he goes, well, we didn't measure it, but it went about 295. And I was like, holy cow. All right, this kid's good. I mean, to hit a driver head, it's like this small persimmon, 295. He is swinging really, really nicely right now. And stuff looks good if you're in the Rory McIlroy camp.
I love that. Well, Rory, certainly with plenty of confidence and a solid play leading up to a home game, as he describes it, which we'll talk about a ton, obviously, for next week. Let's get to some firepower that you laid eyes on today here, Mark, because also in that tie for second was Marco Penge, who shot 4 rounds in the 60s. Weekend was 69-66, and he kept himself in this championship until the very last moment, and this dude can move it.
Jeez, I'll tell you. Well, first off, you know, you see these names, and we don't get to see them very much, but you'll see him on the PGA Tour, of that I'm convinced. And when I saw him for the first time and met him, the guy is lean and strong and athletic and about 6'2" I'd say, but he looks like an athlete. Strength in the legs and stuff like that. And when he hits it, it is hit hard. Like I say, oftentimes, maybe I'm spoiled, but I don't really have my head turned very much. But when he hit a driver, man, it was something to behold. I would say he's up there with Rory and perhaps could hang a little bit if he really let one go. So he can really move it. But the thing that impressed me the most was how up for it he was. He just seemed like he was a scrambling fool, man. I had him for 2 days where he hit the ball on some spots that were, I was like, you got no chance from here. And he'd sort of finagle the thing up and over the hollows in there to 5, 6, 7 feet and make it every single time. And so he looked like he was in for the battle. He was never going to wilt, which was impressive. He sort of looked like a bit of a movie star, like this Italian thing. And then he can smash it off the tee. So it's taken him a while to get where he is because someone from the RNA was saying, you know, he came up with the Bob McIntyre sort of class and he was good and won a number of big events, but then sort of disappeared some. Well, now after the victory earlier this year, he's playing with a lot of confidence. And it might have been gloomy outside right now, but the future for this boy is bright. I mean, he is good.
Well, I knew he looked good because at one point Mina said, "Who is that?" And I said, "That's Marco." She's like, She never asked who they are, like because she likes their golf swing or anything like that. So yeah, I knew he was looking good. The win earlier this year, Greg, that was in China, and then he had piled up a bunch of top 25 finishes leading into this. In fact, he played at Quail Hollow. He finished T28. The runner-up finish here. Keep playing like this. You're not going to be playing on the DP World Tour much longer. You're going to be on the PGA Tour.
No, I actually included him in one of my Twitter threads earlier this week as a guy to watch out for. And the reason was these recent finishes. So, like you said, T28 at the PGA, T25 at the Sudal Open, T21 at the Italian Open, T11 at the BMW International, and now a T2. So that's 5 weeks in a row of continuous improvement in the finishing position. He also had gained over 4.5 strokes ball striking in all of those. So that's why I thought he had a chance to play really well. And I think he over-delivered and outshined. And he also really fits the bill of what the rest of this leaderboard looks like. He fits right in with McIlroy and Gotterup. They drove it great. They were great around the greens and on the greens. And that kind of seemed like the approach play wasn't that indicative of success as it is in a typical event. So it's like you got to scram. You got to. It's kind of old school. Like Mark probably said to one of his college teams, driver, wedge, putter, at some point in the day, and that's what this tournament turned into, and that's what Marco Bench did so well. Driver, wedge, putter. It really impressive to watch, and I think you're both right. He's coming across the pond here, if not this year, soon.
Greg, if there's something that needs attention from the little bit I saw, it is that wedge game. I feel like at times he was trying to overhit the wedges, very much kind of in the McIlroy ilk, because, when you swing hard like that, it's hard to go from throwing 100 mile an hour gas and then throw a good changeup.
Yeah.
So
you're talking, Mark, just to clarify, you're talking about his approach wedges, like, distance wedges.
Exactly right. So, I mean, I watched him once or twice where he was sort of on the cusp of a yardage and then try and overhit one. Now, I understand, and there's a qualifier here to say with greens that firm, you had to really hit it hard to try and get some sort of spin on the thing. But I never really saw any sort of flighted, controlled sort of stuff. Now, around the greens, he's pretty skillful. But when you got that 100, 120, 130 yard wedge, I think there's a little room for improvement, which is a good sign for him.
The boys who tied for fourth need to put some good starts together, and this is certainly on the right track here. So let's start with Matt Fitzpatrick, Mark, because he shot a 67 on Sunday. He eagled 10, birdied 11, gave himself a chance to win this golf tournament. It has not been a good year for Fitzpatrick, but the last couple of weeks have been a lot better. And he moved himself this week from 73rd in the FedEx Cup standings to 60th. So if the season ended right now, he would have gotten himself into Memphis with this start. That's the type of finish that Fitzy needs to the end of this year.
He looked a lot more like Matt Fitzpatrick this week to me. It was like he was a shell of himself for so long, and then all of a sudden, the work he's been putting in or whatever he's been doing, I don't know what it is. I can't offer any insight there. It looked like, okay, he's sort of back a little bit. I thought the game he was playing was very complete. He looked very relaxed with a new caddy on his bag. There was a lot of chit chat for a guy who's not very chit chatty between shots. And he was driving the ball long and hitting some good iron shots. And we know how well he putts. So it was a really productive time of it for Matt. And I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I just feel like maybe he's getting back to where his base camp was a little bit. It didn't look, because oftentimes you'll see him on the range and he's very mixed up between training aids and stuff and doing all sorts of things to keep his golf swing up to speed and keep the tabs on it properly. And the approach looks quite simple and quite singular in everything he's doing. And so I hate to sound like I'm sort of just saying yes and amen to everything, but it looked very good to me. And I feel like for the rest of the season, he's in prime position now to go and build on a good finish here.
Yes, he is. And I'd like to see him make a little run in those FedEx Cup playoffs. The other man there, Greg, you get Nikolai Højgaard, a 64, 6 under, one of the better rounds of the day. And Nico, who was on that 2023 Ryder Cup team in Rome, has not had a great top 2025. Rasmus has been the better Højgaard. T24 at the Rocket Classic, now the T4 at the Scottish. Are we getting a late surge for him to get back onto that Ryder Cup team?
It looks like it. I think there's a very real possibility. And I also, looking at that European Ryder Cup team, I think there's a little more flexibility when you look at the points ranking. You look down that list and they don't necessarily go as close to the standings as the United States tend to. They're much more willing to kind of go hand pick guys, and you start getting some results to match the talent, and it's very easy to put Nicolai Højgaard into that conversation. As soon as you have a couple results to back it up, like you had this week. I worry about a few things with Nicolai in general. I guess this would go to his brother as well. Like, what happens in real contention? What happens when they get in the mix? This is a little bit of a backdoor performance, which there's nothing taken away. A T4 is a T4. But I don't think it quite tells the full story. It's just it's a really positive sign that his play is moving in the right direction. And this is the kind of stuff you expect to see week in and week out from a guy like Nicolai Højgaard, especially when you get on a golf course that benefits distance the way this one does. I mean, look at this. You got Gotterup, Penge, McIlroy, Højgaard. These guys all smash it. And Matt Fitzpatrick hits it a long way too. He was top 20 in driving distance this week. So all of these guys in the top 5 really have some clubhead speed, and Nicolai is not short in that category.
Greg, when I was doing some recon Friday afternoon, he was out there, and if you guys remember Friday morning, Rory played early, and on 10th, the par 5, little helping wind to drive a 7-iron on the green, right? And in the afternoon, the wind's turned in a little bit, and it's kind of out of the east a little, and he has just smashed one down there. And he's in the fairway, and Maverick McNeely, who's not short, all right, is a driver 3-wood, like 20 yards short of the green. And Nicolai hits this long iron in there, flies it onto the fringe of the green, up there to about 20 feet. Craig, my spotter, looks at me and goes, dang, this boy's good. And so we go up there, and he putts up, he makes birdie, and he walks over, and he comes stands by us. And I'm like, what club was that, 4-iron? He goes, no, I spun a 3-iron up into the air to make it come down softly. And I was like, okay, that's now you're just flexing, kind of thing. But that's speaking to what you're saying there. In the next hole, 11 turns up the hill. Everyone else is in like 6-irons and stuff in there. He's a driver and like a chippy wedge. So the gears he's got are crazy. But the funny story I want to share is, so Rasmus, who I'm lobbying for in the Ryder Cup team, has missed the cut. So Saturday, I'm on the range there, and Rasmus is practicing, and I walk up to him, and we're catching up. And I'm like, how's the game? Just chit-chat and all the rest of it. And Craig, my spotter, comes up to me, and he goes, do you see Nicolai's name is in the field for the Barracuda? And I'm like, huh? Anyhow, so I go to Rasmus. I'm like, is your brother playing the Open or not? He goes, I don't know. I'm like, well, we see his name in the Barracuda list. And Rasmus goes, for real? I didn't even know that. and I was like, I thought you guys traveled together. He goes, no, man, I don't know what he's doing right now. Anyway, long story short, now after the big finish this week, now they're both going to be over at Port Rush. So all's well that ends well, I guess.
That is a good story. I like that. I don't know. Maybe I don't know where he's going. Is he going back to the States, or is he coming with me to Northern Ireland? That's your top 5 there. So that's Gotterup, Penge, Rory, Nicolai, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Let me get you a couple of notables, because there are quite a few of them. And we're going to start with the round of the day, which is the man who ends up finishing there in 6th. It's Justin Rose. And Rosie's day was splendid. As you can imagine, it was the round of the day. Birdies on 5, 6, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 18. Not a single blemish to be found. Greg, I'm looking at the results for 2025 for Justin Rose. I count 4 top 40s. 4 top 40s. They are a 3rd place finish at Pebble Beach, an 8th place finish at Bay Hill, a playoff loss at Augusta National, and now a 6th place finish at the Rennaisance Club. So if you're going to do it at those places, in those events.
It's boom or bust. And also all big time events. Right? I mean, think about those venues. It's and those fields. It's really incredible. And he's been kind of a hard guy to put your finger on this year, because he didn't do this at Oakmont. I know that was extremely difficult, but he steps up in some, and when he does, he steps up in a big way. I think part of it is he's very well rounded in his game. Probably the shortest of all the guys up here on top of the leaderboard, and finishes just short of them on the leaderboard. But of course, this round today was splendid. Gets himself in a position, starts moving up the leaderboard with some great iron shots. He stuffed a couple in there, took care of the holes he needed to take care of, with the exception of number 3. Birdies to par 5s, couple wedges close, makes a 20-footer or so, and that was really the longest putt that he made. So it was a very impressive round all the way around.
44 years young, and in the Open Championship last year, Justin Rose finished in a tie for second. So maybe a little bit of good play coming from him next week. We need some good play from Xander Schauffele, Mark, because Xander's 2025 has been a bit of a lost year. Guy won 2 majors last year, has been winless this calendar year. He top 10s again, 68, 66, 71, and today's 66. The stats say he is knocking the cover off the ball. What is kind of the state of the union on Xander as we head to the Open?
From what I've seen, I watched his warm-up on Saturday. It looked really sharp. He seemed like he was in a really good place. He walked past me, and typically Xander had a little wry smile on his face and a little joke that he sort of shared. He's that sort of a guy who keeps things very light. The word from Austin Kaiser, his caddy, is like Xander is hitting it on the button every time. The golf swing's in good working order. He's just got to find a way to start making a few putts. And he did that today in the final round. And I think it was 66 he shot. Correct me if I'm wrong there. He is now, I feel like that's a really nice springboard to go and defend he's not defending his Open title, but to go and make another run at the Claret Jug up there in Port Rush. Because you never know. There's a sense of, not inevitability, but with him hitting it the way he is right now, he's going to get a lot of opportunities. And he's always a good summertime player to me. Like he's almost a lock at Eastlake. So if he just plays well enough to get himself in the 30, then he's going to have a big finish there somehow. So I think the state of the game right now is good. It's just got to find a way to start ironing out the putting. But the beauty about that is that he's got this routine he goes through that never varies. It never, ever varies. And he measures putts uphill, downhill, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. He goes through this routine where he goes around the hole like 5, 6, 7, 8 feet and stuff like that. So he leaves no stone unturned. So when I say inevitable, he'll start making some putts. And when he does, I feel like he's going to be threatening tops of leaderboards again.
He's never missed a cut at an Open Championship. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top 20s in his 7 trips. Why is he not defending, Mark? Because it's not at Troon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. That's grammatically correct, isn't it?
Wow, I don't know, Greg. That's pretty tough. You don't get to defend your Open if it's not at the same place.
Well, I totally understand where you're coming from, Mark. I always thought it was considered a defense.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I kind of like that it's not. It's kind of cool.
Well, he's the reigning champion for the next few days. Yes. Okay. So
yes.
Yeah.
He's the champion golfer of the year, but it does. I guess it does feel different if you're not defending it at the place that you want it at.
Yeah. I want to say this. So we had a dinner last night with a guy who's a fantastic man, historian. He travels around to all these clubs around the world and basically helps them assemble all of their memorabilia and information and stuff like that. Fascinating. And the original Open Championship, right, was basically played over 3 golf courses: Prestwick, Musselburgh, and the Old Course. And Musselburgh was 9 holes, Prestwick was 12, and the Open was 18. And they'd play like 36 holes on each course. And they'd go from club to club to club. And then the winner of that was like the champion golfer of the year. He was the champion. And so that's how the whole name, the champion golfer, sort of stuck over all these years. There's so many stories like that. I mean, to be over here and to be around that sort of stuff and to see these, golf's been around forever.
Yeah.
It was a moving week.
The history is insane. The history is nuts. And when we get to Port Rush, that's 1888, I think, is when that opened, which is just hard to fathom to wrap my little American brain
Rick,
around.
Quickly, you talk about 1888. I saw today at lunch.
I
The
thought you were
very
going to say
first.
that was the year you were born.
Josh, I saw the very first document that was drawn up that stated the rules of the game, like the pen writing. The very first document framed. Unreal.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's continue here with the number one player in the world. His name is Scottie Scheffler. And Greg, it was another solid week, though Scottie never really contended for this Scottish Open. All 4 rounds, 69 or better, including the 67 that he shot on Sunday, which was highlighted by the eagle that he made on number 5. Stop me if you've heard this before. First and tee to green, lost a stroke and a half with the putter.
Yes, I'll stop you right there, Rick. I've heard that before. This one got kind of, he really nearly got himself in the mix. When he made birdie at 10, he got to 9 under, and he was within was he 3 off the lead, or did he get to 2? I think he had a putt at 10 to get within 2, and he was within 3. So he was kind of lurking. The mistake at 11 was disappointing. Both 2 and 11 were short miss putts. Although it wasn't great shots in there. He had to chip out on number 11, but eventually missed a 5-footer. And at number 2, he also had to chip out and missed a 4-footer. So that gives you an idea of how the ball striking's going for Scottie Scheffler. And I'm talking basically had to chip out sideways on both of those. So all the pieces were there, except he just couldn't get anything to fall. And he was so frustrated. I mean, for a lot of that back 9, it seemed like he was, I'm done with this week, which I don't see a lot out of him, but he was frustrated.
I want to get your take on this, Mark, because friend of the pod, Patrick McDonald, floated this on HQ a little bit earlier about how Scottie seems to like fair golf courses, which, if you're the best player in the world, you probably do like fair golf courses. And, Pinehurst got him very frustrated. His links history is good, not great. Maybe because there's a little bit more volatility there. Do you think that Scottie does not like to wrap his head around potential bad luck when you're the best player in the world?
I can see where Patrick's going there, because I draw comparisons to what I heard him say at Pinehurst, where he said there wasn't a side of the fairway to miss on. If you missed left or right, it wasn't, you were sort of done either way. And he plays the game where he's always moving the ball away from trouble. And if he's missing on the smart side of the target. Where over here, you can hit one down the fairway and, catch a wicked bounce and end up in a pot bunker, and then you're cooked. So, yeah, there's certainly more. There's sort of a mercurial element to links golf. But then I hear the same, but in the same breath, I hear a guy earlier in the week saying how much he enjoys playing this, because in the States, you miss a green and you grab your lob wedge and you go. Well, yeah, you can hit any number of clubs and be creative. So, yes, I can absolutely see that. But I'll say this in the same voice, where next week, and he's contending, let's say he wins the Open, he'll love links golf. Remember, Rory McIlroy was a guy who hated links golf, hated it. And now, every time they show up at a links, he plays pretty well, because he's learned just to embrace the stuff and play it for what it is. Because if I was Scottie Scheffler and what he showed this week, or if I was advising him, I'd say to him, Scotty, the breaks are going to even out. And how good you are, just like a Tiger Woods, you're going to end up close enough on Sunday afternoon to have a chance. And then, hopefully lift the claret jug. It may not go your way, but if you just keep getting yourself in contention, you're going to get yours. You're too good not to. So I hear that, and I understand that. And look, golf, this is how golf is supposed to be played. It's a game where the ball's moving all over the show and rolling and that. Next week will be a different thing, because the golf course will be more receptive. So we'll see. But I do see Patrick's point.
Scottie Scheffler, T8 around the Rennaisance Club. I want to pull up his Open Championship history here real fast. 8th at Royal St. George's, 21st at the Old Course, 23rd at Liverpool, 7th at Troon. So it's not.
I'll say this: of all those courses you list,
Yeah.
Royal St. George's, the middle of every fairway is like crowned. And if you can hit it down the fairway and miss a fairway every single time, and if the flat ones, they've got humps and hollows and things all over the show. So if any golf course is going to drive you bananas off the tee, it's that one. And so if he finished 8th there, I think he's going to be fine. I really do.
Scotty Scheffler, the only man in the world that we question if everything's okay after coming off a T8 at the Scottish Open. Victor Hovland, last one here. Then we'll look at the leaderboard. We'll recap our bets. But last one here, because Victor was dealing with a little bit of a neck injury, Greg, that he forced him to withdraw the Travelers Championship. Seemingly no signs of anything negative this week. 66, 72, and then a pair of 67s on the weekend. Played really well, got off to a hot start here on Sunday, made a double on 17, but another week where the ball striking numbers are eye-popping.
Yes, and I was really impressed with his driver as well. You know, I liked Victor coming into this week because that iron play has just been so good. It's hard to ignore. And he's been a pretty good links player in the past as well. But looking at what he did this week, he was 12th in driving accuracy. And that is a really good sign because it's something that Victor struggled with, even going back to the Valspar. You know, when he was so negative about his own swing after winning, a lot of that was the driver for him. And when he had an opportunity to hit a 3-iron off the tee on number 16 there, he took it because it took driver out of his hands. But he seemed much more comfortable with the woods this week. I think that is a great sign heading into an Open Championship where, look, the Open is, you can draw similarities to Florida golf. It can be very penal when you do miss fairways. Like Mark said, you're cooked. You hit it in those pop bunkers. You can hit it into some of that fescue, and it wasn't the case this week, but you can be cooked there too. So it's very penal off the tee in a lot of instances. And I don't know exactly how it's going to play next week, but I do know you want to have the driver under control.
Yeah. Driver under control, irons under control, things trending well for Victor. Mina, let's look at this leaderboard here because we've got just an unbelievable board. You know, we knew this week was going to be one, Mark, where we were going to have a lot of great players in the mix. We got that. And you look at all the names that are trying to prepare themselves for next week, and it seems like we are certainly headed for a big one.
Yeah, it is. And as I look back now, and I'm sitting here in my room in the Marine Hotel, you know, North Berwick Golf Course is right out the window here, which is one of the great places in the world. I mean, you walk around the course there and you see Jake Knapp and guys playing after their rounds of golf because this course is so great. And then you have the weather that we did and the leaderboard that we did. It was like the perfect week. And on this links golf swing of ours, I think a sensational setup to next week for Port Rush, which is a great links golf course. And we're going to see completely different conditions if the forecast holds true. So, yeah, it's been a sensational time. And, you know, roll on next week. I'm looking forward to that one now.
Mina, let's see the grid real quick here. I think Greg carried us. Yes, Nikolai over Rasmus, the brother-on-brother wager. Congratulations. And Matt Fitzpatrick, top 20 for you, Greg. It was no problem whatsoever.
No problem. I had a good beat on this week. I was just, it's one of those weeks I was all over it. Even the losers in the outright category had their own runs with Hovland and Nick Taylor without Rory. And you get Rory up there, it's like makes it feel worth it because Rory almost got it done. So yeah, this was a great week. Wish I was a little more aggressive with Matt Fitzpatrick. He was my golfer of the week and certainly delivered. So I'm very happy with how this one played out.
Yes, thank you for talking me into a lot of Matt Fitzpatrick. That ended up very well for me. That was the only thing that ended up well for me because it was a lot of red for Mark and I across the board. But the best part about it, Mark, there's another tournament next week.
Yeah, and red is under par, remember? Just
That's
don't
right.
forget that red's under par.
That's right. Red is
all right.
Under par. I could go on for 10 hours on the preview for for the Open, but we will obviously save that for next week. But any final thoughts about Scottish? I don't want to get too much into the Open, but anything else from this week?
I want to say this real fast. This maybe I'll sound like the old man, but I just want to say, like today we went for lunch at Muirfield, the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers. And the place is just gorgeous. And you look out there and the weather was perfect. And I posted about it. I was sitting on one of the benches outside, just looking out over the golf course. And Dottie grabbed a picture. And I remember just looking out over this place going, golf is just so freaking great. And we are so lucky to be a part of it. And I am such a lucky soul to be able to come to these sorts of places like this and watch the best when they're at their best. So it's thrilling. And I want to challenge us and all of our fans and stuff to not take it for granted, because it is a sensational game. And I'm very, very thankful to be a part of it and a part of what you guys do.
It is the best. We're going to continue to cover it to the best of our abilities. And next week is going to be something special. Round by round recaps next week, every round for the Open. Get your coffee ready, get your YouTube ready, get your podcast ready. But we'll put a pin in that for now. Big thanks, Mina, doing all the hard work behind the scenes, all the graphics. Thank you very much. For Greg DuCharme, for Mark Immelman, I'm Rick Gehman. This has been The Second Cut. We'll catch you next time.